We've been joined by Professor Godfred Bokpin, who is Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School. You've heard the Finance Minister indicating looking at a 30 to 40% haircut of the nominal value. Interest rates may not exceed, no more than 5%, and tenor which may not exceed 20 years. Professor Bokpin, so first of all, help us understand. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Princeton, and good morning to our Chinese listeners.
Great. So help us understand, for those who, may be confused about all of this, he's talking about a 30 to 40% haircut on the nominal value and also, coupon rates of not more than 5% and tenor not exceeding 20 years. What are all these about?
Okay, thank you very much. The starting point is to go back to the IMF supported program.
Okay.
It's not so surprising the way the minister is talking, and I think the market would have known. The investors would have known to a greater extent because a careful reading of the IMF supported program clearly tells us where the country is heading towards, what level of haircuts, in fact, in present value terms, negative NPV, that investors should be expecting. First, if you look at the way the program is designed, the financing gap in balance of payment terms is estimated at $15 billion. Out of this $15 billion, Winston, the IMF is only providing $3 billion over the next 3 years.
Okay.
The World Bank is giving approximately $1.6 billion. Then there are other development partners who are also contributing, very marginal. When you account for all of this, there is a gap of approximately $11 billion to be closed from external debt restructuring in the next 3 years. That's huge. What that means, on the average, what it means is that annually, the next 3 years, Ghana government and the people of Ghana expect a debt relief from our external creditors, and here we are looking at them from two levels: external bilateral and then external commercial, which includes Eurobonds.
Okay.
Averagely $3.5 billion for the next 3 years, working up to $11 billion. So that gives an indication of the level of haircuts that external creditors would have to take in order for Ghana to have a decent space. Now, how did that come about? Under the G20 Common Framework of Restructuring Debt of Vulnerable Countries, any country that seeks to take advantage of the G20 Common Framework must, of necessity, apply for an IMF-supported program. Okay?
Okay.
So once you make that application, and given that Ghana and like many other countries like Ethiopia, Zambia, Chad, Sri Lanka, and all the others, what we are going through can also be described as debt-induced macroeconomic instability. What that simply means is that your public debt is just unsustainable.
Okay.
And the IMF will not lend to a country.
So Prof, just before you continue, for those who are listening to us right now, and they're asking themselves a simple question, because there are some people who invested in Eurobonds through collective investment schemes.
Yes.
They don't, understand what's happening to their funds. They're asking questions. 30 to 40% haircut of the nominal value. Coupon rates not more than 5%, tenor not exceeding 20 years. What does it mean when you say you're going to have a haircut of between 30 to 40% of the nominal value?
Okay, so if you have your instrument, a bond,
okay,
with a face value of let's say $100,
okay,
and the government is seeking to apply a nominal haircut of 40%, it means that without looking at the market value, it means that we are looking at getting $60.
okay,
$40 is gone.
okay. So in effect,
Now,
you're saying that, let me just get a clarification. In effect, you're saying that if you invested $100 and government is giving you a haircut of that amount, 40%, it means you are losing 40% of the amount you invested.
yeah,
And in this case, that'll be $40.
You are not going to get that back.
Okay. Okay.
That's at one level. The second level that the minister is talking about is a coupon rate of not more than 5%. Now, if you look at the series of Eurobonds that we have issued, you will see that the weighted average coupon rate is more than 8%.
Yes.
Government is seeking to reduce that to not more than 5%. So, apart from the principle where you are losing something, government is also hoping that the coupon rate will be reduced. So, if you bought Ghana government Eurobond with a coupon rate of, let's say, 8%, and you are expecting that every 6 months you're going to get a coupon payment of, let's say, 4% of the face value, you will not get that 4% every 6 months.
Okay.
Or annually, instead of getting the 8%, so assuming the face value of your bond is 100 Ghana cedis, $100, and on the coupon rate on it was, let's say, 8%. 8% of $100 will give you a certain amount. Now you are not going to get that. The government is hoping to apply a rate of, let's say, 5%. So again, you are going to get a reduced coupon from that level. That's the contours within which the government is looking at all of this.
Okay.
A good way to analyze this is to look at the whole debt restructuring in present value terms. And the technical words there are whether the investors will end up with NPV neutral, which means there are no haircuts, and we know that for now, that is not on the table. Or NPV positive, again, that is not on the table. So what we are looking at now is NPV negative. So, now, because government has suspended coupon payments as part of the G20 Common Framework under the Debt Service Suspension Clause, the actual loss may be lower than what has been proposed because we have arrears that have to be recalibrated into the discussion. Because so far, the government has saved about $2 billion by not making a coupon payment on our external debt.
Okay.
Okay, so we have to factor all of that into it. But at the end of the day, what is clear, even before the minister made the announcement, look, government had hoped that they were going to get a haircut of close to 50%. Wilson, this is where you can hazard this from here. If you look at the IMF supported program, the total eligible or universe of eligible external debt for restructuring is just $20 billion. Okay? As at the end of the debt sustainability analysis cut-off date 2022, the total external debt of Ghana was $30.5 billion. Out of that, $8.8 billion relates to multilateral institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and the African Development Bank. They have decided to exclude their debt. So $8.8 billion out of that $30.5 billion have been excluded, leaving external bilateral that which we owe to sovereign countries of about $5.4 billion, and then Eurobond then was 14.6. Now we are looking at something around $13 billion. So if you look at the eligible bond external debt available for restructuring, which is just around $20 billion, and the level of external debt release that we are expecting of approximately $11 billion, that nominally works up to almost 50%. A combination of probably coupon reduction and then moratorium or reprofiling of the principal is what we are looking at. But Winston, this is where the minister is also getting leverage from. Hello?
I'm listening.
Now, if you look at access to the international capital markets, the weighted average interest cost that African countries have to pay from going to the same market is around 11.6% across the continent.
Okay.
The average for Germany is 1.5%. The average for the US is 3.1%.
Okay.
So what that tells you is that African countries borrow at a rate almost 8 times that of Germany, almost 5 times that of US. Of course, the economic fundamentals are not the same. Okay, even if you account for the fundamentals, again, we know that there's some level of yield that cannot be explained by the model. It's simply what we call the African risk premium. So given this 11.6 versus 1.5 Germany, 3.1 US, and then Asia is around 6.1, and the rest of them, you will see that across the continent, the discussion about debt restructuring is also to push the interest rate down.
So let's look at one thing, Prof. I mean, now that you've explained that, let's look at one thing. So we had a domestic debt exchange program. We've gone through, the debt held by corporate institutions, investment firms, to individuals, to pension funds, local dollar-denominated bills. We've also gone to cocoa bills. And now we're getting to the Eurobonds. For some, the view is that this may not impact us so much because it is Eurobond mostly held by external persons. How true is that, and what value of it is held by Ghanaians?
No, that is not entirely true. In fact, there are Ghanaians who have bought the Eurobonds. There are Africans who have also bought into Ghana government Eurobonds. There are banks in Ghana on the African continent who have participated in Ghana government Eurobonds. So there are some individuals who are taking one level of haircut with the domestic debt exchange and have to take another haircut from the external debt restructuring. Beyond the individuals, there are African regional banks. I will not mention names here, but the data is available anyway, that have exposure in the domestic financial market and again have exposure in the Eurobond market with respect to Ghana. So they are taking haircuts at 2 different levels. Okay. So and including individuals, Ghanaians, okay, and other Africans as well. So you see that from day one, we had said that there was a need for a coordinated approach to this debt restructuring, given the multiple participation of individuals and then institutions.
Okay.
But as you can see, that is none of the business of government. And that is typical of African leaders. We are only interested in ourselves as leaders. We have not taken time to analyze the impact of the steps we are taking on households, firms, businesses.
And so talking about the impact, for instance, because these financial institutions, some of them have already been hit by the domestic debt exchange, and also going to be hit by the external debt exchange. We saw the losses they made with the domestic debt exchange. What is going to be the impact?
It's going to be huge. And already some of the banks have made provisions. Some have made provisions of 30% haircut. Remember, somewhere December last year, government had hinted of a haircut of about 30%.
Yes.
Somewhere December. That together with the progress they made with the domestic debt exchange, with the pushback and all of that, wasn't going to work. So government was pushing. But remember also, let me say this before we continue with your question. Remember that this government proposal, we expect that there will be counter proposal from the investors. From the external debt perspective, there are essentially 3 committees. We have the official creditor committee co-chaired by China and France that has to deal with external bilateral. Then when it comes to the external commercial Eurobonds, we have 2 committees, one at the international level, then one at the regional level. There will be counter proposals. Remember, they are not going to give up that easily. There will be some kind of discussions to see what they want. But the issue is that, listen, they don't have a lot of leverage to negotiate, because this whole thing is guided by the IMF World Bank joint debt sustainability analysis that has estimated the financing gap that has to be closed from both domestic debt restructuring and then external debt restructuring. We can demonstrate that in slides or whatever later, but you will see that when we were done with the debt sustainability analysis in 2022, Ghana's debt to GDP ratio in present value terms was 109% of GDP. Hello?
Yes. Go ahead.
Our debt to GDP in present value terms was 109%. If you account for the run on the CD towards the end of the year, then you are looking at debt to GDP ratio in present value terms of 112%. And as a medium debt carrying country, the present value of our debt to GDP ratio should not be more than 55%. Okay. So the question is, you want to drag down your debt to GDP ratio in present value terms from 109% to 55%. Then you are looking at adjustment that you have to do. If they apply the fiscal adjustment, and of course that wasn't enough, it only reduces the debt to GDP ratio from 109% to about 87% or so, or 81%. Then it means that 81% and then 55%, there is a gap that has to be closed.
Sure.
The gap could be closed either from debt restructuring or structural reforms and governance reform. Typically, structural reforms and governance reforms take time to bear fruit. We look at the results in the medium to the long term. Okay. So it means that the low-hanging fruit in closing that gap from, let's say, 81 or 87% to 55%, you have to come from debt restructuring, which is a combination of domestic debt restructuring and then external debt restructuring. Now, given that Ghana had a protracted balance of payment problem running into this IMF-supported program, the external debt relief is looked at in foreign exchange terms.
Okay.
It's looked at in foreign exchange terms. It doesn't mean that the inflows will come from outside. It has to be generated from here and saved. Okay, so that will help to sell up our international reserves and offer stability to the city. Now, listen, that is why the IMF itself acknowledges that without sufficient progress with the external debt restructuring, the IMF program can only achieve limited effectiveness. Sure. And that is why, even though we reached staff level agreement on December 12, 2022, IMF had to wait until financing assurance was procured on May 13, 2023, before the program was approved on May 17, 2023.
Okay.
Even now, with the first review that we just completed, staff level agreement was positive. It is not expressly stated in the IMF supported program that without an agreement with external debt restructuring, the board won't approve. But it's almost a condition now, because the IMF knows that if they approve the first review, we are only going to get $600 million. The gap that has to be closed is in excess of $3 billion by the end of this year. So if they only inject 600 million, the program won't work. So the risk with the program also has to do with the progress we make with the external debt restructuring. That is why every discussion now is going to be on the external debt restructuring. And I know the IMF, the G20 Common Framework, at the apex level, the supervisory body is made up of the IMF Managing Director, the President of the World Bank, and then I think the Minister of Finance of India. Okay, so they provide that supervisory framework at the apex level. There's a technical committee working out all of these things to ensure that progress is made in line with the IMF program timeline. Because any country that wants to take advantage of the G20 Common Framework must apply to the IMF for a program. And then the IMF debt sustainability analysis is what guides the discussion of debt restructuring and all of that. Listen, the other bit also is that because of the comparable debt treatment among different creditor types, there is inference in terms of what external bilateral creditors are willing to offer or haircut they are willing to accept. Okay. Also guides what happens in the other creditor types as well. So, yes, we expect some pushback from external commercial Eurobonds in the rest of them, but there's really a limit to how far they can push back because there's a gap that has to be closed. Other than that, the IMF program itself won't work.
Great. Professor Godfred Bokpin, I know you'd have to leave us, so thank you very much. We'll continue with these discussions on Ghana's external debt restructuring. Thank you very, very much for joining us, Professor Godfred Bokpin, who's Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School.